Hi everybody and welcome Out of the Gate, Daily Racing Form's weekend handicapping preview program. I'm your host Stan Illman. Thanks so much for watching. Here's what's coming up in this week's edition of Out of the Gate. Daily Racing Form handicappers Mike Beer, Craig Milkowski and I will take a look at three major graded stakes races at Gulfstream Park on Saturday, a couple of them with possible Pegasus World Cup Day implications. The Fort Lauderdale Stakes on the turf, the Harlan's Holiday Stakes on the main track going a mile and a 16th, the Rampart for fillies and mares going a flat mile. Nicole Russo's got a pedigree pick segment for you. David Aragona of Timeform US is going to spotlight the Rampart, plus best bets, horses to watch, and lots more. So let's break Out of the Gate. We begin Out of the Gate with our Horse Watch segment. Our colleague Craig Milkowski is spotlighting a 4-year-old to follow in 2020.
My horse watch this week is going to be looking at bikinis. The Chad Brown 3-year-old has always been a promising colt. He won his debut at 2, had a layoff before he came back in early summer at Belmont and romped again, and then he was jumped up into stakes competition. He went off the favorite in the Curlin Stakes. He ran okay that day, didn't run particularly great. Then tried the Travers, even tougher company, and didn't run at all. But since then, he's regrouped. He went to Keeneland. He won an allowance race nicely. And what I really liked was his Cigar Mile. I think he ran a better than look fourth. He got a career best Timeform US speed figure of 122. He had previously run a 120 in his 2019 debut in that race I mentioned at Belmont. And I actually think he was up a little bit closer to the pace than he probably wants to be for his best efforts. So looking at bikinis, I think is a promising horse as we move into 2020. I fully expect him to become a stakes winner, and not just a stakes winner, but a graded stakes winner.
My horse to watch is a 2-year-old who just ran last Saturday on Cigar Mile Day at Aqueduct. Moon Over Miami is his name. Bill Mott has had a very, very good year with his 2-year-old so far in 2019. Here's another one. Let's look at Moon Over Miami. This is his second career start going a mile. He debuted sprinting, and it just looked like a race that he really needed. He is from the family of multiple Grade 1 winner, Music Note. And this horse just took a big step forward in his second start. He's tracked the pace from the outside. He takes it over in mid-stretch, and he's just going to power clear at the end. 82 Beyer speed figure. I think it compares very favorably with the 2-year-old stakes race they ran later on the card. This horse might have a future for Mr. Mott.
Very impressive performance. And as you say, there's something in the water with those Mott 2-year-olds. They are firing on all cylinders in 2019. My horse watch is at Laurel. It's a 2-year-old filly named Hello Beautiful. She has won her last 3 dirt starts by open lengths. I didn't expect this, though. Last time out in the Maryland Juvenile Filly Championship, she blasted right to the front. It was her first time going 7 furlongs, and she just keeps on rolling along. And that's a nice filly in Miss J. McKay that she's putting in her place. She's going to win this race by almost 12 lengths with a 95 Beyer speed figure for Brittany and Sheldon Russell. Now, she's going to probably take the rest of the winter off, and we'll see her in the early spring. But this is a filly to watch at shorter distances next year. She's by the good regional stallion Golden Lad out of a Tisnow mare, and this Maryland bred has a ton of early speed. I'm curious to see with the winter off if she comes back mature, bigger, and better, and that's a scary proposition. Let's get to some handicapping. The Fort Lauderdale is your Saturday DRF Race of the Day. Let's throw up the field for Saturday's DRF Race of the Day. It's the Grade 2 $200,000 Fort Lauderdale Stakes going a mile and an eighth on the turf. Carded as race number 9 at Gulfstream. You can access free Formulator past performances for this race on the Race of the Day event page at DRF.com, and for expanded stakes previews of many of the major stakes races all weekend long, visit video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Our colleague Craig Milkowski likes a horse that's got plenty of figs. Let's hear his analysis.
In the Grade 2 Fort Lauderdale Stakes, our Timeform US Pace Projector actually has this as a race that has a no speed label. There's just no horses who have shown consistent early speed, enough to have a running style of leader speed or even as a tracker. So in that case, I think there's a horse who's particularly suited to take advantage of that, and that is Channel Cat. Now, Channel Cat hasn't won in a while. He's lost 3 times in a row, but they were all losses in Grade 1s, including the last time where he lost the Breeders' Cup Turf. He finished 7th, but he was only beaten 2.5 lengths that day. But what I find intriguing about him is a couple things. First off, he is probably the classiest horse in the field. He comes in with the best speed figures in the race on the Timeform US speed figures. And when I look back at the Bowling Green at Saratoga, I think he faced a very similar setup. It was a race without a lot of speed. He was able to seize command of that race early and take them wire to wire, and I don't see any reason he can't do it again for here. So for that reason, Channel Cat's my selection in the Fort Lauderdale.
I think I'll go against the favorites in this race. I wanted a horse who I felt like could get forward early in this spot, and to me, that's a horse, maybe Marceau, the 9, could really get at the right trip in this race because there's just not a lot of speed in here. This horse has plenty of tactical speed, even though he's cutting back in distance. We're going to put up a replay of a graded stakes win for this horse 2 starts back. This is at Keeneland, going 1.5 miles. He set a perfect trip in this race. He's going to take it over in the stretch and really finish this race off at the end with a nice run. I thought he ran really well in here, Marceau. He's just, to me, really improved since Mike Maker's taken over. And going back to his last start at Aqueduct, I think it looks worse on paper than it is. He just, to me, never got comfortable in that race, was not in the right spot when it mattered, and then he just came up empty at the end of the race. I think he's better than the last race. I think he'll get a better trip in this race than he did last time, and at 10-1 on the morning line, I almost feel like I have to bet this horse back.
I think Mike said a mouthful about the pace situation in this race. There is no speed, and that terrifies me because my top selection at Mission Office is admittedly a 1-run closer. We're going to go all the way back to the Dixie Stakes on the Preakness undercard, and here he is, last on the rail, turning into the stretch, and this trip just doesn't work out. He's in behind horses, he's looking for a seam, he's trying to pick his way through, he's eventually going to dive down towards the inside, and he is going to finish with a lot of interest. And in his subsequent starts, I think he has been compromised by traffic issues, by pace issues, and that's always going to be the problem with a 1-run closer. This horse does have some ability, however. He is lightly raced. I still think there is another forward move in him. He just needs a little bit of pace to set up his kick, and that's what I'm hoping for at Mission Office, my top selection in the Fort Lauderdale. Our good friend Nicole Russo has a pedigree pick segment. Let's go to her right now.
Hey everyone, Nicole Russo coming to you for this week's pedigree handicapping segment on Out of the Gate. If you're a pedigree geek like me, the My Charmer on Saturday's Gulfstream card is particularly fun. Here's the field for the 1-mile race for fillies and mares on the turf. And as you parse through, you see several European sires represented. The legendary Australian sire Fastnet Rock is the sire of Take These Change. We've got Argentina represented, and of course Mitchell Road is a half to Kentucky Derby winner Country House. So a lot of fun things in this field, but for the purposes of pedigree handicapping, we're going to zero in on a horse trying something new and what her parentage might say about her, because that's where it can be effective. 3-year-old Beechwood Ella will be running 1 mile for the first time. She did win at 7.5 furlongs in Europe, but scored her only win in the U.S. at 5 furlongs. In fact, on this Gulfstream course, we'll take a look at that. Beechwood Ella is from the first crop of No Nay Never, a sprinter whose best foals so far have been sprinters, such as July Cup winner 10 Sovereigns and Coventry winner Arizona. However, No Nay Never is by classic sire Scatty, and No Nay Never's daughter, Nay Lady Nay, successfully stretched out to win the Mrs. Revere at Churchill. So not out of the question that he could get a middle distance horse with the right female family, and that might be what you get with Beechwood Ella's Dam Tamazoug. She won at 1 mile. All 3 of her other winners have won at 1 mile or beyond, including Kathaya, who won at distances up to 2 miles over hurdles, and Dager, who won at 1.5 miles. This is the family of multiple Group 1 winning router Saki, famously second in the Breeders' Cup Classic to Tisnow. Now, there is a class question here with this filly. I think there are some nice fillies and mares in the My Charmer, but I don't think Beechwood Ella is beaten. It will be a result of the distance. In fact, her blend of speed over stamina in her pedigree might make this mile or another sort of elongated sprint or middle distance perfect for her. Thanks for tuning in this week on Out of. We'll be back with more on Saturday's Gulfstream card after this break.
Are you a horse player looking to raise your game? For over 120 years, expert handicappers have relied on Daily Racing Form as their must-have source for news and data, featuring exclusive buyer speed figures, Timeform US pace figures, and integrated replays. DRF Formulator is the most powerful handicapping tool on the market today. Use what the pros use. Go to drf.com/formulator and enter code DRFTV to get your first card free. drf.com. Raise your game.
Storm from Racing Blue, a breakthrough in sports nutrition for horses.
Welcome back to Out of the Gate. Let's throw up the field for the Harlan's Holiday Stakes. Could be an interesting local prep for the Pegasus World Cup later in the Gulfstream Championship meeting. This race carded as race number 10 on Saturday. Grade 3, 100 grander at 1 mile and a 16th. For expanded stakes previews of many of the major races all weekend long, please visit video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Second choice on the morning line, Mike, but a horse that might go off a little bit longer is War Story. He's close to $3 million in career earnings. He is just a hard and heavy hitter.
Yeah, I think you might see him drift up in price a little bit in this race. We'll see what happens. He's got plenty of back class, plenty of back races that would make him a contender in here. I guess the question is, how is he going to handle the shorter distance? And is he, quite as good as he once was back earlier in his career? We have a replay right now we'll look at of his most recent start, the Greenwood Cup at Parks. This is going 1.5 miles. This is what they like to do with this horse now, is go a little bit longer with him. It's not his best race, Dan, but I can tell you what, he shows that he's still a fighter.
It shows he's still a fighter. Marconi, the winner of the Brooklyn, is on the outside, and War Story was involved in a duel with him. He puts Marconi away, but this long shot on the outside, Adventist, is going to run him down late. He still can fight. He's still okay, and we know he can handle 1 mile and an eighth on his very best day. He's got plenty of back races. Our friend Craig Milkowski has a horse that has plenty of back races, especially at Gulfstream. Let's go to his analysis on the Harlan's Holiday.
The Harlan's Holiday Stakes looks like a two-horse contest to me between the 3-year-old Bodie Express and the 4-year-old Prince Lucky. Most people are familiar with Bodie Express. He was America's best-known maiden for a while. He ran in the Preakness where he lost his rider at the start and kind of run around the track just on his own. But since then, he's been pretty impressive. He's run twice at Gulfstream Park West. He broke his maiden. Finally, in a race with only a 99 Timeform US speed figure, but he did it really easily. The next time out, he got a 112 and once again an allowance romp, but in neither one of those races did he face any real competition at all. He was allowed to get away with a really slow pace in that allowance win. So for that reason, I'm going to side with Prince Lucky in here. The gelding has been just consistently fast for trainer Todd Pletcher. He's always running 120 plus Timeform US speed figures, and he's really taken quite a drop in class here in this grade 3. He was in the grade 3 Bold Ruler last time, but that race featured Maximum Security, so obviously was a grade 1 horse in there. He was beat just a half length the time before with a 123 Timeform US speed figure in the Kelso Stakes where he lost a pat on the back. So I just think at this point in time he's a little better horse. He's going to offer a little bit more value, so it's Prince Lucky for me in the Harlan's Holiday.
I think Prince Lucky is probably the horse to beat for Pletcher, breaking from the rail. We'll see how he does around 2 turns. I'm going to go with the now horse, though. The 3-year-old Bodie Express. We have a replay right now. We'll look up of his most recent race. This horse has come back off of a layoff following the Preakness where he lost his rider and has posted 2 blowout wins at Gulfstream West. This is the most recent one. Right on the lead in here. He had a pretty soft trip, overmatched horses behind him. I just like the way he did it, Dan. He ran away from this field. He is headed the right way. The distance is no problem for him. I'm going to take the hot horse.
I'm with you. I like the fact that they gave him that break after the Preakness. He needed to grow up. It wasn't the first time that he was very fractious and he caused all kinds of problems with his riders behind the gate and at the start. And as Mike mentioned, since he's come back, he has dominated. Now, he likes to be close to the pace. There is some other speed in here. I think he can sit just off. This is a horse that was good enough to be second to Maximum Security in the Florida Derby when still a maiden early this year, and I think he's getting good at the right time. I'm with Mike. I'm going with Bodie Express in the Harlan's Holiday. We'll stay with Gulfstream Park, but we'll take a look at the filly and mares in the Rampart. Let's throw up the field for the Rampart Stakes for fillies and mares going a 1-turn mile at Gulfstream on Saturday. Carded as race number 8, $100,000 is the purse for this Grade 3. Remember, for expanded stakes previews of all the major races and lots more content, head on over to video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Mike, seems like there's a lot of early gas in this race, but I think the speed of the speeds on the far outside, that's Cookie Dough. She ran some big races earlier in the year. She likes Gulfstream. She's back with Stanley Gold.
Yeah, I think all those things are true. We'll see what she does in here. I get that she likes Gulfstream Park. She's run some really nice races over this track, especially in graded stakes competition. I just felt like maybe she was getting some soft trips in those races. Maybe they're not quite as good as they look, but she's certainly a contender in here. We have a replay that we can throw up now. This is 2 starts back, and it's not at Gulfstream. This is at Belmont Park sprinting in the Grade 3 victory ride. She made the front in this race. She ran out the other speeds, and you're going to see here she's just confronted by Royal Charlotte in mid-stretch, and is no match for that horse. She will be clearly second best here through the final eighth of a mile. Listen, she's a contender in here, Dan. She's dangerous if she makes the lead. I just wonder how good she actually is.
I think that's a fair question. She ran well in the Black-Eyed Susan at a distance that was a bit long for her. I like the freshening. She runs well fresh, and I think the one-turn mile might be pushing it just a little bit. I like her a little bit better at 7/8, but if she can get to the front, maybe fresh at Gulfstream, she can pull it off. Our friend Craig Milkowski is looking at a horse that's going second off the layoff with a lot of upside.
Grade 3 Rampart Stakes is not the strongest Grade 3 you're going to see. When I look through the speed figures, it's a pretty weak group in my opinion, but it did draw a big competitive field of 11, and I think there is some value to be found in here. Cookie Dough returns from a brief layoff, has been working well. I think she's probably going to be the favorite in here, but I settled on a different 3-year-old, Molto Bella. She showed a lot of promise early in the year, romping the victory in the Gasparilla at Tampa Bay back in January. Before then, she ran poorly in the Rachel Alexandra at the fairgrounds. Something must have went amiss that day. She was laid off for quite a while, but when she came back in November at Churchill, she was really impressive. That day, she sat off of a slow pace. It was only going 6 furlongs, but she was a couple lengths behind, had to fight her way through traffic, and once she got clear, she just overpowered those foes. She got a nice time for him U.S. speed figure that day of 107, which matches up really well in this field, and she gave the impression to me that she's not going to mind the extra distance one bit. So for me in the Rampart, it's going to be Molto Bella.
I'm going to agree with Craig on this one. I like Molto Bella as well in this spot. She's a very lightly raced horse for Ian Wilkes. I like her running style for this race. I like this distance for her, and I really like her upside second off the layoff. I think she sits a trip in this race and takes a step forward.
She just really looked good in her last race off the long layoff. I mean, she was in behind horses till about the 3/16, and once she wheeled out, she made those horses pay, and it was her first start off a long benching. She can do better second off the break, and she can sit off of the pace. We talked about Bodie Express being the now horse in the Harlan's Holiday. Maybe this horse right here, Baccarat Fashion, the number 9, is the now horse in the Grade 3 Rampart. She was going nowhere fast for a while. Peter Walder took her over. Her last 2 races have been revelations at big prices against weaker competition, including this race at Gulfstream Park West, where she sat off a loose leader, attacks on the turn, and says bye-bye, and it's a 97 Beyer speed figure out of nowhere. She wins by 8.5 lengths. Now she's going to have to stretch her speed to a mile. If you have worries that maybe she'll bounce off this race, well, she breezed in 45, and then she came back with a 5 furlong breeze in 58 and 3. She seems to be feeling well right now, and although she's the 5-2 morning line favorite, I really think that she's going to drift up because this is her first start against stakes competition, let alone graded stakes company, and facing top horses. I'm going to go with the number 9, Baccarat Fashion, in the Rampart. David Aragona from Timeform US, he spotlights the Rampart. Let's see who he likes, and then stick with us because we still have best bets for Saturday.
Hi everyone, for this week's Timeform US Spotlight, I'm going to take a look at the Grade 3 Rampart Stakes on Saturday at Gulfstream Park, going as the 8th race. A mile for the fillies and mares on the dirt. Let's start by taking a look at the Timeform US pace projector for this race. It's a large, competitive field. You see the number 11 horse, Cookie Dough, is projected to be on the lead in the early going. In a situation where the pace projector is predicting that a fast pace may develop, and you can see that just looking through the field. The number 8, Tweeting, has speed. The number 9, Baccarat Fashion, who's actually the morning line favorite, is another horse with speed who might be a little bit closer than that pace projector indicates. You've also got the 6, Molto Bella, stretching out from a sprint race. All of these horses could be forwardly placed. That might set it up for a closer. We'll see how it ultimately plays out on the racetrack. Let's take a look at that morning line favorite, Baccarat Fashion. I wasn't originally going to talk about her because she's not a horse that I like a whole lot in this spot, but since she's a short price on the morning line, I think she's a horse that you have to consider. Her last race is one that I think you have to make some decisions about because the buyer came back very high at 97, but the time form US speed figure of a 103, not a number that makes her particularly competitive in this race. And I think it's a difficult race to assess because it was one that was dominated by long shots. She herself was a long shot, going off at 11-1 that day, coming off a victory in her prior start where she was 23-1. So her recent improvement was not really expected. That race has had a couple of runbacks and they validated the buyer number, but I think this filly, that number is a little bit out of line for everything else that she's done prior, so she does have to repeat it. And furthermore, Baccarat Fashion has to deal with more pace this time, and she has to stretch out to the mile, something that she hasn't done successfully in the past, so I'm very skeptical of her if she is indeed a short price. Among the shorter prices, I vastly prefer the number 11 Cookie Dough, who was projected to be on the lead by the pace projector. Cookie Dough's just been in decent form lately, hasn't really gone on from early in her 3-year-old season. She's coming back in Stanley Gold's farm now after racing for Kieran McLaughlin over the summer. The time form US speed figures that she earned for those summer races on the Naira circuit, they're actually okay. 2 back in the victory ride, she got a 121 time form US speed figure when she was second behind Royal Charlotte. Obviously, her number got bumped up quite a bit due to the early pace of that race, which was quick. But she's had trouble finishing off her races recently, or at least she was in the Kieran McLaughlin barn. So she's got to have a little bit more staying power as she stretches back out to this 1 mile distance. But she went route distances successfully in the past. Maybe she's just wanted to go longer recently. She's been working up a storm at Gulfstream Park for this race, so she might get back into form, and it doesn't hurt to have Paco Lopez on board since he wins at a high rate down in Florida. I'm definitely using her, but I want a closer in this race due to that pace projector, and the one that interests me from off the pace is the number 4 Pink Sands. Not sure we're going to get that 8-1 morning line on her because I do think she makes a lot of sense in this race, but she is a filly that has run well at Gulfstream Park in the past. Let's actually take a look at her race last year when she won a nominators of 2 allowance race on February 15th at Gulfstream Park, going this 1 mile distance. She sat much closer to the pace this day, but was able to take it over in the late stages and fend off Tweeting, who's back in this field again today. Since then, they tried some tougher spots, some graded stakes races with Pink Sands. They tried cutting her back in distance. They tried going 2 turns with her. I really think the 1-turn mile is the ideal distance for her, and I can forgive her for some of her recent losses because she hasn't really had ideal setups in quite some time. 2 back in the Chuvy, she got no pace to close into, going 1 mile and 1/8, which is too far for her. Then 2 back in the Locust Grove at Churchill Downs. I know that was a poor effort, but that was a race that was really dominated towards the front end, and she was just held up at the back of the pack behind a slow pace. She ran a bit better last time with the Pumpkin Pie at Aqueduct, and while the pace figures are color-coded red, that was a race where the winner came from off the pace. There was a time at Aqueduct where the kickback seemed to be really detrimental to horses closing from off the pace, and Pink Sands was taking a lot of kickback that day, whereas the winner, Saguaro, who closed, was out in the center of the racetrack. I think Pink Sands is better than that, and I expect her to move forward here, stretching out to the 1 mile distance. If she gets that kind of pace setup, I think she's a logical contender in this race, and I'm taking her hoping for a price around 4 or 5-1, which I think would be fair.
Time for our best bet segment here on Out of the Gate. Craig Milkowski is going to try to beat the morning line favorite in the $500,000 New York Stallion Series at Aqueduct.
My best bet this week is Captain Bombastic in the New York Stallion Series Stakes at Aqueduct on Saturday. It's being run as the 8th race at 7 furlongs. It's for 2-year-olds and has a really big purse of $500,000. So therefore it drew a full field of 14, and our Timeform US pace projector fully expects it to be a hot pace in here. Based on just field size alone, that is likely, but when I look through the PPs, there's plenty of early speed in here, including a horse I think is going to be a suspect favorite in Dream Bigger. He's won his last 2 on or near the lead in fast-paced races, going 6 furlongs, now stretches out that extra furlong. So I'm going with Captain Bombastic, as I said. He is the horse with the best Timeform US late pace rating in here. He's undefeated in 2 starts. He's won at 6.5 furlongs. He won at a mile last time, very game in victory, holding off Cleon Jones through the stretch when it looked like he was probably going to be beaten. But I think he's really going to like the pace set up in here. I think he's really going to like the turn back. So again, Captain Bombastic for me.
My best bet was entered to run at Aqueduct a couple weeks ago too, but his race was rained off the turf, so he's going to turn up down at Gulfstream Park. I'm going to race number 5, Blockade Goes out for Shug McGahee and ridden by Jose Ortiz. This horse was a very promising young horse for Shug. Started off his career improving race by race, broke his maiden at Gulfstream Park very early as a 3-year-old, and then went to the sidelines and didn't turn up for over 600 days. And that was in this race right here at Aqueduct in November. I thought all in all, this was a pretty promising return off such a long layoff, because if nothing else, it showed that this horse can still run a little bit. Overall, he set a pretty nice trip, but you're going to see him in behind horses for most of the way. And now he's trying to race on at the end of this race, but he just can't get fully clear. I like the way that he keeps kicking on at the end, though. I think this was a very promising return to the races for a horse who might still have some upside yet. He ships down to Gulfstream Park. The favorite in this race goes for Chad Brown. That's a horse that I do not like. I'm going to try and beat him with Blockade if he sticks around his morning line.
My best bet's at Laurel, race number 3, number 5, Call Me Jelly Roll, making the first start off the Claudio Gonzalez claim. Gonzalez is dynamite off the claim. This is a really hard-hitting filly who's won a third of her 18 lifetime starts. Last time out at Laurel, she was in between horses, battling it out for the lead. We pick up the replay. She's now down on the inside. She's still battling it out for the lead, and she's going to take them all the way down to the wire. She put away myriad pace challengers, and a good trip closer is going to run her down very late. I thought this was a promising effort for Call Me Jelly Roll, who now draws a comfortable outside position in the Saturday third race at Laurel, and she can stalk, she can go to the lead. She likes to win races. Not sure what kind of price we're going to get. 9 to 5 on the morning line. I think she's fared around 9 to 5 or 2 to 1. That's Call Me Jelly Roll, race number 3, number 5 at Laurel on Saturday. We thank you for watching out of the gate, and we urge you to follow all of DRF TV's offerings. Please follow on social media on Twitter at DRF Video, and for the latest news and notes from America's Turf Authority Daily Racing Form, please follow on Twitter at DRF Inside Post. That's it for this week. Best of luck when your horses break out of the gate.